So I'm going to be focusing this time around about some of the more interesting things about now that Zoho 1 is out. I'm going to be talking about a lot of things. First off, let's start off with this thing here. So the moment someone says data analytics or business intelligence, this is what you see. You talk about this word cloud, this is essentially what you see whenever someone says analytics, right? So what I'm going to do now is basically do a lay of the land. Where does Zoho have a role to play in this whole big data and analytics space? That's what I'm going to start off with, and we're going to talk about the lay of the land. So the next slide here basically outlays the various technologies, the terminologies that we use in the analytics space. On one side, you have the data source, which can be financial analytics, financial text. It could be Internet of Things. It could be a networking system. It could be your business applications. It could be a travel application, so on and so forth. So much of data being generated, right? And in this day and age, the speed at which you consume data becomes necessary. So that's where a new stream of applications have started, and we call them streaming applications or stream processing, trying to process data on the fly before storing them. That's where you have these technologies such as Flink, you have Kafka, you have Spark, where you basically start dealing with data that come at real high speeds from the sensor network. It could be a self-driven car, it could be network monitoring system, so on and so forth. And the rate at which you have to process the data is critical here. You just can't wait forever to process the data and put them to rest. And even before you put them to rest, you have to join data across multiple data sources, do the processing, and then put it to rest. So that's where this whole streaming analytics has essentially cropped up in the last few years. I mean, a lot more technologies have been open sourced under Apache, and almost all of them here are licensed under Apache. Now, when it comes to data storage, all along you've had the MS SQL servers, the Oracle databases, the MySQL databases, where the paradigm has always been relational data model, meaning you first create the schema for the data that you're going to store. Meaning even before you have one record in your database, you have to define your record structure. It really doesn't scale in this day and age, right? Over the past few years, you basically have started looking at different types and different structures for data. Storing data, for example, in the sensor network, in let's say network monitoring systems, you need to store data as time series. Storing them as a relational model just doesn't scale in terms of processing. So that's where you have the time series databases, and then you have graph structures these days. And then, of course, no structure at all, meaning you just want to dump a blob of data in the form of a JSON or an XML inside a database. That's where you have the likes of CouchDB, the Cassandras, and you even store things like audio files, multimedia files, images, and everything as a part of your data structure for analysis. And that's where you have the data storage technologies. You have the RDBMS, structured data, unstructured data. And then it has been pretty much the norm since the 70s to warehouse the data that you store. Meaning, for analytics, back in the past, the norm, and even now, a lot of large organizations use data warehousing systems, wherein they repeatedly normalize the data. For example, they could be using applications for sales, an application for marketing, an application for, let's say, operations, right? Each of them would be its own silo. There's no way for it to kind of blend data simultaneously. So what they would do, they would put it into a data warehouse system, then use ETL. I mean, again, applications such as Informatica, SAP, and then they transform and load the data for analytics. This has pretty much been the norm. Now, in the last decade or so, you've had a tectonic shift wherein this whole notion of data warehousing has moved to the notion of data lakes, right? You have the likes of HDFS, you have Azure, and also Amazon Redshift, wherein you can store data. And then the beauty of these the data lake systems they are schema on read, meaning you just dump data and then you define the schema as you read it. Right from the time, look at the transition. Before you store the data, you normalize. A lot of people would argue it takes a lot of time to store the data. I can't process anything because first I need data to be stored, and only then process. The fact that you have to write it into a schema, then store, it have its advantages and disadvantages. So what are the advantages of doing that? The advantages are, you know, any system that's going to read the data, it can read the data, it knows the structure, but not all systems will consume the data the same way. So all these systems, the read applications, used to kind of consume the data, do the transformation, and then again there was a lag. Now in the data lake system, the kind of storage that you go into, you're basically dumping everything at one shot, and every application, as it consumes the data, it kind of defines what schema it wants for it, right? And then, now, how do you do analytics in a data lake environment? That's where data wrangling comes into place. Pretty much like ETL, which was kind of something that was a conduit for analytics when you had a data warehousing system. For data lakes, you need a data wrangling, or this is what we call it as a part of data preparation. We call it data wrangling. And you basically take unstructured data from different sources. You then define what should be the normalization for analytics for a specific application. Again, the consumer of the data defines the preparation, what they want, how they want the data to be prepared before they consume it. And once the data has been prepared, the consumption is all about the visualization of data, where you have the likes of Zoho reports, you have Tableau, you have so many other options out there. So where does Zoho have a role to play today? Obviously, the data visualization place is where we play a big role today as far as BI is concerned. But in the coming months and coming quarters, we are also going to release a service for data wrangling. So we are not yet even sure about what name it is going to have, but essentially, we are going to have a complete solution. If you have a data source, you're going to be able to do data preparation using Zoho, and you're going to be able to do visualization and analytics using Zoho. Since we are at this stage talking only about visualization, what does a visualization tool need today? It needs to have the capability to consume data from multiple sources, allow you to create different kind of visualizations and dashboards, and then the ability to collaborate, wherein you can share the reports to other users in the organization, or embed these reports in other applications that you may have, or just put it out on the web for consumption, or just set up a schedule where you would create a PDF on a weekly basis or monthly basis and share it with the constituents who should be consuming the data. Right now, again, with Zoho 1 being out there, a lot of things have been done in Zoho reports in the past few months. One of the major things that you're going to see when I do the demo is a completely new UI that's been released. And that's going to be rolled out in the coming months for all of, again, I'm sure some partners here use it. Any partners who are using the Zoho Reports 4.0 UI? Any customers? No, okay. It's not yet been even given out, I think, for beta, but internally we have started using it. I'm going to show it to you as I do the demo. And here, what we have already done in Zoho Reports is default plugins for a lot of Zoho services, such as CRM, Creator, Finance, and the whole shooting match projects, and Bug Tracker, and so on and so forth. Over and above that, it also has integration to other cloud services, as you can see. Now, even when we kind of give out these integrations with other services, now that we have Zoho 1, we have organizations that are using almost multiple applications within the Zoho suite. No point in trying to analyze the data as a single source. For example, there's no point if I'm using Zoho Finance and Zoho CRM, trying to analyze data in isolation is just as good as not doing it. Zoho Reports now gives you the ability to bring multiple data sources under a single workspace and then operate on the data, and it automatically generates a lot of canned reports that even meshes data across the data sources and blends the data and gives you the ability to, kind of get in other data sources that you may have for your business, then start doing blending and create an enterprise-wide BI application in your environment. I'm going to show you this particular implementation. This is a creative agency called Out of Line Design. This is a business that we have created where we talk about this when we do our Zoho 1 seminars. So this is a application, or this is a business that uses lead generation using multiple channels, as you can see, Sales IQ, Zoho Social, and Forms, and put those leads into CRM. And It also has an order management system created using Zoho Creator, which again pushes data into the Zoho Finance module and the Zoho CRM module. As far as support goes, it uses Zoho Desk. So you're looking at the typical kind of business where you would have such applications being used. So I would like, as a part of data analytics in this business, to blend data from all these applications and create dashboards and reports. That's going to be my intent, and that's what I'm going to show you. And I'm going to show you some real details and guts of the system as I do this presentation. So data blending, bringing in, let's say, Zoho CRM and Zoho Finance into a single database for analysis. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Zoho Reports. This is my instance. So here is a database called Zoho One Blended, where I have basically brought in data from Zoho CRM, Zoho Finance, Zoho Creator, and Zoho Docs, which is essentially, and when I say Zoho Docs, I've basically used a file that I've stored in Zoho Docs for analysis, and I bring it out here. Now, what you don't see here is a desk application being integrated into the data source. So how can I do it? So what you need to do is select the data source. Let's say you have already created a Zoho CRM Analytics data source. All that you need to do is click on, by the way, this is the new UI. This is what you're going to see in the upcoming months. And I want to kind of go through this demo using this UI. You click on Create, Import Data. And what you see here are the list of services with which we have integration or plugins already made available. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to scroll down and select Zoho Desk, which I use for support. And I'm going to say, go fetch the data from the Zoho Desk application. And then select the modules from where I need the data. I'm going to select everything. And I want this to be done once every 24 hours, the synchronization between Zoho Desk and Zoho Reports, and not kind of bombard the system every 3 hours to pull the data. I'm fine with this kind of schedule. But if you need to reduce it to something lesser, you want it to be more frequent, the most frequent it can go or it can get is 3 hours. All right? So I'm going to keep it at every day. Now, I'd like to bring your attention to this particular screen here. It says Zoho CRM Advanced Analytics connectors already set up. Do you want to automatically set up joins between Zoho CRM and Zoho Desk? So out here, it knows the fact that Zoho CRM has already been associated with this data source, and it's going to automatically create the joins and create reports that's going to blend the data between Zoho Desk and Zoho CRM. All right? So there might be some canned reports, but there may be other reports that you may want to create, and you can do that too. So let's give it some time. It's going to go through this process because I have quite a bit of data in my Zoho Desk. It's going to bring all the data. It's going to do the mashing. It's going to create some canned reports. Let it go through that process. I just wanted to show you how exactly you get in multiple data sources for blending into a single database. Now, while that is being done, what I'm going to do is I have my Zoho CRM set up, and I brought in the data. So it typically does not give you, like by default, the average time to win deals. You know, it tells you how many leads you have. It creates a lot of reports. But here is a scenario where I want to kind of compare the time that a deal was created and the time that the deal was closed and create a report that shows me month over month the trend of the average time that the company is spending to win deals, right? So to do that, what I need to do is create what we call a formula column. So I'm going to show how to create a formula column in Zoho Reports. So this is where I have the CRM module data. I have the accounts, I have calls, I have campaigns. So what I want is to create a formula column in the deals table. And to do that, I get inside the deals table. I click on Add. I'm going to say I'm going to add a formula column. By default, I have a whole lot of functions that are available to me that I can apply on the columns. So here, I'm interested in computing the difference between two dates. So I'm going to say, show me all the functions that I can apply on the date on a field that has a date value in it. So I'm going to say date difference. As you can see, it gives you the help. It gives you the context. It says the to date and from date for which you want to compute. And by the way, it shows me the columns that are available on which I can do this particular formula. So I'm going to say, give me the date difference between the closing date of the deal and then the created. It says it's created time, so I'm going to convert the time object into a date object. So that's it. I'm basically creating the time to win a deal, right? The time to close a deal, we don't know whether it's won or not. That's going to be depending on a filter. But here is a formula column. So now, as you can see here, you're going to see this new column that I've added. It's called Zoho test call. And it's basically giving you the value, which is essentially taking the two columns in the same row and computing the difference. Now, what I want to do now is use this column and create the report that we are interested in, which is average time to win deals, right? So we click on create, new report, on a chart view, go to the deals module, on the x-axis, I'm going to have the closing date, the month and year, and then on the y-axis, I use this Zoho test column. I don't want the sum, I want the average per month. And then this is going to basically take every deal that I have. Maybe it's closed, maybe it's open, I don't know. So I'm going to apply the filters on top of this particular report, wherein I'm going to use the forecast type and say everything is won. And I also want to take another column here for filtering, the stage. And I'm going to say all those that are closed won are the only stages that I'm interested in. So at this point, you're going to have a simple graph that tells you how much time you have been spending across each month to win deals in your business, right? So this is a very simple formula which is applied on the same data on a single table from Zoho CRM. Now, you got to save this. So that's one of the reports. Now, this is an interesting report that I'm coming to, wherein I want to see the deals to invoice funnel, right? Wherein the invoice information is maintained and tracked as a part of Zoho Finance, and the deals information, as you just saw, is a part of Zoho CRM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a report which is going to use the data in both these modules and create a single visualization. It's going to be a funnel. It's going to be an interesting report. So while this is done, I'm going to close this. And I want to show you the formula that I'm going to use for this particular report. So here, I'm not going to create a new column, but I'm going to aggregate the data on a column that's already there in the system. So in this case, to identify the total number of deals won, the way I did it in the previous report was I set up a filter. But here, I want to use that fact, whether the deal has been won, and do a computation on top of it. So to identify the number of deals I won, I basically apply this formula that you see here, which says count the number of deals that have been won only if the forecast type is won, right? So this particular column now, it's called an aggregate column, and This is applied on a single column across all the rows. So this is an aggregation across all the rows in my table, and it gives you that data set. In the same way, to identify the number of invoices that I have closed in my Zoho Finance, I run yet another aggregate formula on the invoices out of line invoice status, which is closed, and then count the number of invoices. So count the total number of invoices that have been generated, which are in closed state. So that gives me a number again. So I'm going to use these two numbers and then create the funnel. So let's see how this is done. So the first column, again, is on the deals table. I'm just going to copy this to kind of gain on time here. And I'm going to say add. This time it's not a formula column. It's going to be called an aggregate formula. So what I'm doing here is counting the potential ID, the list of all the leads in my system, only if the deals have been won. Otherwise, it's not going to take that as a part of the aggregation formula. So this goes inside my deals table. And then this is the CRM part of it. Now, for these wins, there is an associated invoice in the Zoho Finance invoice module. And that's where I'm going to see how many of the deals that have been won for which invoice has been generated and how many of those have been won. You're going to see that in a funnel. So to do that, I get this particular formula that I have. And I go to the Zoho Finance module, the invoice table, add aggregate formula. So like I said, I'm looking at all the invoices, counting all the invoices that are in closed state. Now I'm going to create a report. I'm going to say, show me the deals. Then I also need to go to the other column that I have. I can actually show you the other one that I've already created. It's better to kind of show it this way. So here what I'm saying here is the list of all the count of all the potentials that I have across my system. That is, I'm not only looking at leads, I'm trying to filter out the total followed by the other columns that I've created here. So let's go back to this other report here. So here you have the two columns that we just created, the aggregate formula. So it only looks at the deals that we have won. So let's take the sum of all the deals that we have. Looks nice. Now it says there's a few changes to be made here. I want to, instead of showing percentages, I'd like to show you some numbers. So there you go. So this kind of shows you the funnel from the CRM part of it, which says the total number of deals that you have, the total number of deals that you have won, which is an aggregate formula, and then you're associating with the fact that you also have associated invoices in the system. So that shows you the total number of invoices that you have and the total that you have completed. Now, I can go and tweak this report to show you the numbers and everything, but given that we are running out of time, I'd like to go through the other examples, or at least speak to it, and show you the report that I've pre-created. So I actually also have a order management application that was created as a part of the out-of-line business, out-of-line design agency's order management system using Creator. So I brought in the data from Zoho Creator, and I'm going to quickly show you a list of all the products that have been requested by users who use the service to products that are not there. For example, my invoice system does not have all these products, but my customers have placed requests for new products. So if I want to get that, so I'm storing the information about all the orders that have come in the Zoho Creator application, and the list of all the products that I have is maintained as a part of Zoho Invoice. So now, how do I see what my customers are asking for, right? So I'd like to bring the data from Zoho Creator and see the list of requests that I have come, which do not match what is there in my Zoho Finance database. So to do that, it's not simple. You got to get to the next level where you have to use the concept of query tables. This is an extremely powerful feature of Zoho Reports, which allows you to use SQL queries to create joins and to create a relationship across data that you have brought from other applications. Maybe these are not even Zoho applications. You could probably bring data from a completely different system. Maybe you have a third-party quoting system or a billing system, but there might be some columns out there which may relate or can be mapped to the columns that you have in your CRM or maybe your finance system, and so on and so forth. At that point, it allows you to actually create reports, not just rely on the lookup columns and the aggregate formulas. This is actually Zoho reports on steroids. At this point, if you know SQL, you can do whatever you want with the system. By the way, by SQL, I mean these are only going to be select queries. You cannot do any inserts, right? And the output of a query table is essentially, think of it as a virtual table. So whenever you use a query table, it executes the SQL dynamically and creates that row set or the data set on the fly. So I'm going to craft it in front of you. This is, again, going to be fun. So again, as you can see, it lists out the list of all the tables that I have in my database. So here I'm going to say, show me the name of the item. I'm going to have an alias here. So a simple query that shows the list of all the orders that I've received, which I do not have in my Zoho invoice system. So meaning these are products that the customers is requesting from us, from the company, but we don't have it. Now, this gets stored. This is something that you can reference and you can create a report on top of this. So what did we see real quick? We saw how you can actually create DB with multiple data sources. That's the data blending part. Adding a formula column, aggregating, applying aggregate formulas and using it in your reports, and the concept of using query tables. And of course, report generation. Couldn't get much into it, but you quickly saw once you have the data sources, it's so simple to create, drag and drop and create reports.